All right. I'm just checking some stuff out. All right. Oh my gosh, everything's working. It looks pretty good. I've got the chat up. The chat looks like it's working for me. So, look at me doing stuff and things. I'm getting there. I'm like a real boy at this point. Um, so we're gonna do something a little bit different. And really, it's something I used to do for when I did a lot of Warhammer. Uh, I think the glasses are what's throwing that off, but that's okay. It's something I used to do when I did a lot of Warhammer, and really what it is, yeah, it's the hat. Okay. Uh, Strategy videos. I've been focused on breaking down a lot of the factions and how I kind of feel like they play and things like that. And what I wanted to do today is I wanted to touch on a few different strategies. Ayo! Big shout out. What up, dude? So I wanted to talk about Veerman because this is my favorite army, hands down. I've got 3 different armies in the game right now, and I know I played Enforcers at Adepticon, but that was out of necessity. That wasn't out of desire. And Veerman's really where my heart's at because I love the models like the Nightmares and the Tunnelers are some of my favorite models in Mantic's whole catalog of models, and I like the way they play. They're kind of a technical army. They give you a lot of different tools. They give you some trash units, but they give you some nice hard-hitting units, and things kind of fill their specific role very well. And one of the things I wanted to talk about first was why I love the Progenitor. I've had a few people ask me a few different times, like, bro, why did you 2 Progenitors? Because that's what my friend Bailey ran. Was 2 Progenitors, but he wasn't experienced enough of the game to really kind of make that list sing the way it probably should have. And so I wanted to kind of touch on why 2 Progenitors. Why I didn't bring like a Broodmother or the Tangle Tunneler or a Tangle. It was 2 Progenitors and a Master Creeper, and then quite a few troop units. Stalkers, Crawlers, Maligni. I had 2 Crawler units, 2 Stalker units in the list, a unit of Maligni, and honestly, I probably could have brought more. I just don't know what I would have dropped. I'd have to really kind of go through and fine-tune it at that point. Arguably, I didn't necessarily need the Tunnel Runners or maybe both of the units of Nightmares. Maybe I just bring 1 unit of Nightmares and then more bodies. But we've got Universal Battle set up. I've got everything labeled the way it should be. They are obviously not the right models, but we do need, I don't need dice. What we need is maybe some objective markers. And we'll grab, 3 inches seems a little big. But for what we're doing, I guess 3 inches will be okay, because that'll at least let us know about where we need to be to control it, right? So if I'm setting up a board, and it looks roughly like this, obviously I've only set up about half the table because I don't want to pull out whole armies. I don't need them for what we're doing. I might try to set an objective here, and there's probably, we can actually, let's just duplicate this one real quick. Can we? Boop. All right. So maybe it looks a little bit more like this. So I might try to set one kind of like here. Where, I can control it. I'm not super worried about getting shot off the table because I've got some extra bodies, things like that. But if I'm playing against Enforcers, I don't mind if they're going to shoot me. That's what they want to do. And if they're shooting me, you know what they're not doing? They're not coming and taking the objective. And my goal is to try to make it to where they're not deleting a unit completely every time they shoot. I'm just trying to clean some of this up. So the cool thing about Veerman, sorry, I am a horrible multitasker. The cool thing about Veerman, and we don't need them to be perfect, we just need them to kind of be, is that you're going to probably out-activate most of your opponents. You might hit maybe like some Plague builds or even some Night Stalker builds where you're not. And honestly, I'd probably put the Nightmares behind the Stalkers, but you get what the intent is. So what I'm going to probably try to do, and actually, we'll move the Progenitor over here because he doesn't need to be next to the Nightmares. And we'll put the Nightmares kind of like this. Boop, boop, boop. And we want things set up so that the Nightmares have cover because they're height 3. But the Stalkers are height 2, so they'll be able to claim cover from the Stalkers. Right? That's what we want. Now, I am going to pick 1 or 2 objectives on the table. And let's say this one's kind of here. And these are the 2 objectives that I'm picking. These are the ones that I'm going to go for first. I don't care what my opponent's going to do because I don't need to hold all of the objectives early. I just need to outscore you for the first few turns because you're probably going to kill enough things that you're going to score late game, right? So if there's 4 objectives on the table, if I'm playing against Enforcers and they're going for all 4, I've already won that game. Because Enforcers, they can't really spread out like that. So I might have a couple units. Let's, we'll just grab this Stalker here, and we'll just move this whole physical Stalker. I might have like a Stalker or Crawler or both over here, just to kind of zoom up and grab this objective late. Because they move 14 when they sprint. So I might try to save almost all of this for last. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 units here. That list had 14 activations. Most Enforcers' armies are not going to get to 14. At 1,250 points, they're going to probably struggle to get to 10. Unless you kind of play them the way that I historically have played them with a lot of min-size squads. And I'm not saying that's better or worse. I feel like it's a little different now that I've played with some beefier squads. And there's kind of like an argument you could make for either. But you're probably looking at about 10 activations at best coming from Enforcers. So I can save all of this for last to see what they're going to do. And they're going to have to move these Enforcers first. And it doesn't really matter where they go. What matters is that they go. Okay? And we're gonna assume these are regular Enforcers because I've been told by a couple Enforcers players that I'm an absolute lunatic for running melee Enforcers, but I just love them and I've never used them and thought, gee, I wish I didn't bring them. But let's say that Enforcer player, and we'll give him some cover here. That's not very fair, right? These are wide open lanes. Although I don't really have very good shooting based on what we have on the table. We'll put a wall in here. Maybe various plants, relics, hills, rocks, walls. Reading is hard. I have a degree in English, and I still struggle to read. So, let's say there's like a barricade here, and maybe like a barricade here, okay? So what they might do is they might just kind of move up because they don't want to come take objectives early. Most Enforcers players, from my experience, and even myself included, we don't want to go rush out onto objectives early unless we have, something really tanky. Maybe we have a unit of defenders that we can sprint out there and give them cover so that you're going to struggle to shoot them off the table. And then they're going to get that Overwatch token, so you're not really going to want to charge them, right? But a lot of times, Enforcers players, their turn 1 is setting up for turn 2 or turn 3 because they can't just rush objectives. So once that happens, I'm going to sprint. And I'm taking my Stalkers. And we're going to go, and we're just going to come plant on this objective. We're going to get our points early. I shouldn't have done that because he's on there. That's okay. All right. And this is going to have to be one of my last activations. I could potentially do it early. It just depends how the game flow goes. If my opponent is like activates this unit first and kind of leaves my Stalkers in a position where I can move them up and be safe, then I will absolutely take that opportunity just so I can force him to have to, or her, them to have to activate more units. So it's one of those where you're going to have to read the situation, but you're going to go into this with the idea that this is going to be one of your last activations. And the reason is because if they're shooting missiles at stalkers, right, or things that have that kind of range, more power to them. You know, if you've deployed well, at the very worst, you should have cover. And it's one of those, like, cool, maybe you kill 5 stalkers with your missiles, but then maybe my tunneler got to be careful going too early for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, if they're shooting missiles at my stalkers, obviously, if I've got a tunneler or a rat fiend on the table, like, oh darn, they're not shooting missiles at that. So it's one of those where if they're shooting them at stalkers, I'm still winning. And if they're shooting them at the tunneler with its shields and they haven't depleted the shields, I'm still sitting in a pretty good place. So what I would do then is, if I needed to, if I'm looking at this going, okay, they have this thing that they could still come up and shoot me with, I'm going to spend that command point and I'm going to run my Progenitor up here, because he also moves really fast. And then I'm going to spend his command point, and we're going to haze grenades. Let me see if I can find a haze grenades token. It doesn't have to. Bro, these symbols are just like wrecking my brain. God dang, I'm just clicking buttons like a idiot. I like the. We'll just X is good, because X gonna give it to you. So I'm going to haze grenades that unit. Haze grenades is going to, what would you say are tough matchups for Veerman, and how would you play them? I will get to that in just a minute. That's a great question. And honestly, the big thing there is going to be the build. Like, what is your build? But we'll touch on that in a minute. So I'm going to haze grenades them, because haze grenades is a 1 CP order coming from your Progenitor. You pick a unit within 9 inches, they get stealth and cover. But they don't get it until the end of the turn. They get it until that unit's next activation. So it's going to follow through into the next round. Which is why you kind of want to pick when you do it very well. Yeah, strategery. Got to get them big brain plays out every once in a while. Got to flex that smooth brain of mine every once in a while. So you're going to have that haze grenade last until the next round. And that gives them stealth and cover. So they're off rip just going to be -2 to hit. So that Enforcer squad that's right up here, they're not hitting on 4s into it anymore. They're going to hit on 6s. If they steady aim, they might hit on 5s, but now they're not moving. So that's another turn I'm sitting on that objective. And now they either need to dedicate another unit to come try to shoot me off, because again, let's say this is a 7-man squad with nothing but laser rifles. That's not how I would run them, but it's one of those, like, some people use missiles, which is lower volume. Some people use burst lasers, which is higher volume. Some people use flamers, which is the same volume but hits on 4s. So for argument's sake, we're just going to say they're all laser rifles. You've got 14 dice, and we're going to get the calculator out. I can quick math it, but I'd rather give you better odds, better statistics. So we've got 14 dice, and we're hitting on 6s, 7s, and 8s. Actually, we'd hit on 5s if we steady aim. So we're going to multiply that by 0.5, because that's it's a 50%. Haze grenades is too good, man. And the fact that if you give them the grenade launcher, they can shoot a smoke grenade, it's just like, you can throw so much smoke out by taking 2 Progenitors, and then you also have the faction order that does the same thing. So they're going to get 7 hits, but there's no AP, and your armor 5, so we're going to multiply by 0.5 again. So they're going to kill 3, maybe 4 rats. That's not the end of the world, because you're going to run probably 15 rats in that squad. Stalkers are a unit that you want beefy. You want 15, maybe 13. 13 is what I run in my list, and that had mostly to do with points. Plus, you know, I've played some Skaven in the old world and in old Warhammer Fantasy, and 13, man, that's the rat's lucky number. You know, that's how you get the great horned one in there. So, you know, that's part of it too, is just kind of like a throwback to some of that. but they're also overwhelmed 10. So if you run those 15 model squads and they kill 3 of them, you still have 12. Your unit strength is 3. So now they have to devote something else to shooting you. Just be glad you're playing Command Protocols. Version 1 of Firefight had the most busted smoke mechanics ever. I didn't play, and just something to consider, and a lot of people don't realize this. I've only been playing this game for about 6 months. I started in September at the Michigan GT. That was really my first dip into Firefight. So I only know this version. I saw Warpath in very limited, like on a limited basis, and Dead Zone I saw a couple times in 2nd edition, but I never really committed. Hey, what's up, Leo? So that's one of the things, like, to me, this is why I take 2 Progenitors, because now they're -2 to hit. Now, the other thing you can look at is that if you can always just hit the dirt. So you could move them up here, hit the dirt, and then haze grenades them, and that's going to give you -3 to hit. I totally agree. I haven't played any of the older editions. I come from 40K almost exclusively, and this has become my new favorite game. I do dabble with like Conflict 47 and like Bolt Action and things like that, but like this right here has become my jam. Outside of the game that I'm working on, that I'm writing, but it is not this type of game. It's a bit more like a historical than it is like this. But yeah, so you can hit the dirt and then haze grenades them. Now they're -3. So now you've got enforcers that are hitting on 7s. Which is like how I live my life, right? Hitting on 7s. I try not to hit on 3s, man. Bad joke. But anyway, then they have to steady aim just to hit on 6s. So now you're going to cut their efficiency down even more. And that's why, like I said, like I double haze grenade. Because I want 2 Progenitors. With so many factions being shooting centric, the only issues you're going to run into with this is like if you hit a list that's all melee. Because your haze grenades are basically going to be useless. I agree with that. Playing Firefight just makes me want to play more Firefight. You know, and that's going to go back into the question that was earlier in the chat, and that's, you know, what are potentially bad matchups for Veerman? The thing with Veerman is that they don't necessarily have bad matchups. It's all in how you've built your list, because they have a tool for just about everything. But anyway, before we dig into that, because now I'm like shotgun blast, right? Like my brain is everywhere. What I would do, though, is I would come bring these nightmares over here, and I would start staging them. Now, they may decide they want to pop shots off at the nightmares, but that's where having that Progenitor is handy, because now I can use the faction order on the stalkers if I want to give them stealth and cover, and then I can throw the Progenitor at the nightmares to give them stealth and cover. So now I have 2 units that are -2 to hit. The nightmares are armor 6. The nightmares have 3 hit points. So it's like, all right, you can throw dice into them, but I have a unit strength 3 unit on the objective, and if you're just going to sit there and shoot me, I'm going to chew through enough of your dice that you're going to have to commit way more of your army than you're going to want to. Obviously, again, there's a few exceptions. If you play dumbass dwarves, I mean, like, I'm not putting anybody down. I feel very strongly about dwarves in every tabletop game. You know, obviously they have an order that's just like, ha ha ha, I'm going to ignore your, I think it's stealth. And then they also have an order where they're just like, ha ha ha, I'm just re-rolling all my hits. But their volume is a lot lower. You know, so you don't have to worry as much about that because their volume is half of what Enforcer's volume is. Sure, they have AP and all this other stuff, but when you're playing rats, you're just like, man, I don't care if you're AP1 or AP5, like, they're just stalkers or crawlers at the end of the day. You know, so that's where you're looking at staging this. Now, the thing becomes, like, if you have stalkers on that objective, again, if you're looking at a shooting Forge Fathers list, like they don't have a ton of melee in there, or you're looking at Enforcers, or you're looking at some of those shootier Asterians lists, sure, they can shoot you off the objective, but it's going to take a couple turns just to clear through one, unless they just put their whole army into that one unit. But then again, oh well, because you've got another unit of stalkers that you can just sprint up there and take that objective, or a unit of crawlers, right? Like it's not the end of the world. Honestly, my favorite is to, instead of stalkers, I put crawlers on the objectives first. And the reason I put crawlers on the objectives first is because crawlers are cheaper than stalkers. I'll put maybe a 10 to 12 model unit on that objective. They have the same overwhelm, the same unit strength. But if you want to sit and shoot, I can sit and shoot back. And sure, stalkers or crawlers are ass at shooting. Like, they are horrible. But I'm just blazing away anyway. Like, that's what they're there for. I'm just going to sit here, blaze away, get effectively double the dice. If I hit you, you get a pin token. Because, again, like, if I were to shoot at these enforcers, they're going to have cover. So I'm going to go from hitting on 6s to hitting on 7s. So if I blaze away, I go from hitting on 8s, but I double the dice. So my math is literally the exact same, but I get more dice to roll. And if you don't know, there's an expression in my play group, and that expression is, if you can't roll hot, roll lots. So just keep that in mind, man. Like, I will orc math just about everything because it works. It might not work every time, but if I throw enough dice at something, something's going to go through. So that being said, all right, now this Enforcers player has a choice. They have to either shoot me, or they have to dedicate some sort of unit to come charge me. If you charge me, like, let's say you've got some Peacekeepers or Defenders. If you come charge me, you're going to have to charge the Stalkers or Crawlers that are on the objective. I'm not going to put those Nightmares close enough. But what I am going to do is I'm going to put those Nightmares in a position that once you're on that objective, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to protect yourself from them. I don't care. Like, that's the way it's going to be. And what's going to end up happening is I'm going to tag you with those Nightmares who have 2 of the heavy drills, which are AP3, and they're 4 dice each. So it's going to be 8 dice. I'm going to make sure I don't have a hindered charge, whether I have to spend in order to do it or not. And I'm just going to tag you with 8 dice, hitting on 3s, AP3, anti-tank. And then I'm going to, if I've got 1 or 2 more with the regular ones, it's going to be another 8 dice, 4 dice, AP1 with Vicious. And that's what we're going to do. You know, obviously, if I can or I need to, I can throw a pin token with other crawlers, things like that, just to prevent charge reactions. Or if you've got an Overwatch token, I can further modify that controlled fire you're going to throw at me. So keep that in mind. With Veermen especially, the reason I think they're one of the tougher armies to play is because they require a really intrinsic knowledge of how to line up your activations. You know, with Enforcers, you can be a little sloppy and it'll be okay. You're going to struggle to score points and hold objectives effectively and efficiently in certain missions. But your armor's going to be solid, you've got 2 hit points, and for the most part, unless you're just a goober, you're not going to be picking up whole units left and right. So, like I said, like, if they do decide they want to come charge, if they charge the Stalkers, even if they're doing Peacekeepers, right? If they've got a unit of 4 Peacekeepers, that's only 8 attacks. I think it's actually 9 if you've got the Sergeant with the Phase Clause. If you don't have the Phase Clause, that's fine. But let's assume it's 2 attacks per model. That's 8 attacks. Let's call it a clean charge, so they're going to hit on 3s. 8 attacks hitting on 3s. That's what? 62.5% hit rate, roughly. So you're going to hit with roughly 6 of them. If they've got the gauntlets, they're AP2, so you're going to damage on 3s. So again, you're going to get 4 to 5 through. But if that's a bigger squad, if that's 10 to 15 Stalkers, let's say you kill 4 of them, and I've got 10 swinging back at you, I'm just swinging 20 dice. There's no AP, there's no nothing, but I'm still swinging 20 dice. And if I roll enough of them, something's going to go through. Yeah, and like I said, like, into a Pathfinder-specific army, I'm just going to be doing a lot of hit the dirt, right? Like, you can have all the +1s to hit you want, but I'm just going to hit the dirt. I'm going to haze grenades, and I'm going to make you -3. And if all you're doing is sitting and shooting, I'm going to get to objectives. And that's kind of how I look at it. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to table me, because there's a good chance you would. But the question is going to be, can you kill me fast enough to come take objectives? And I'm going to have things that are fast enough that I can catch you. You know, the Rat Fiend, I can catch you. That dude sprints 15 inches, I'm coming. And then if I put the Tunneler or Tunnel Runners into reserves, subterranean deployment, you also would have to account for that. And if I have the Tunneler in subterranean deployment, and I personally run Maligny in my Tunneler, that's one of those where I can pop that out, and then I can come out and I can shoot you with Maligny. And that's going to kind of follow up into the next segment that we're going to talk about. Because now it's, hey, I also just have another Progenitor. So let me see if I can find something to be a good Tunneler. Beep, beep, whoop, whoop. Why you all in my ear? So we'll rename this handsome fella. And then boop, 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 boop. Do I have a bigger mutant rat? No. And we'll do this. Oh. Beep, beep, beep. Okay, we're gonna move that. We're gonna boop. I know I can lock them. Is it this one? I don't remember. Doesn't matter. That's not the right button. Rat Fiend. That's okay. This big mutant rat is just going to be a Rat Fiend, and that's okay. So, I like this right here. I'm going to keep a Progenitor here, and I'm going to keep a Tunneler here. And I've had a lot of people go, hey, do you put your Tunneler in subterranean deployment? And that's not a question I can give a direct answer to, because it's very matchup specific. There's certain matchups where I'm not going to put it in subterranean deployment, and there's certain matchups where I am. If I were to play against Leo or Dare to Wonder in the chat, if I were to play against his Pathfinder list, I would probably put it in subterranean deployment, because he's going to be able to outrange me, and he's going to be able to pick those shields off so that he can start sniping me with his missiles. And I don't want that. Whereas, if I put it in subterranean deployment, now I get to pick where it comes out, and that's something he's got to account for. If you don't have any shooting, like I played against an all-melee plague list, everything went on the table, except my Tunnel Runners. I put them in subterranean deployment, and the reason the Tunnel Runners went into subterranean deployment was so that I had a fast unit that could shoot and could charge, right? Like, it was pretty solid at both, to help slow down that, like, I'm just going to torpedo across the board. Because if you torpedo across the board, and then I can get those things behind you, I'm going to be able to kind of, like, give you some fits. Because now you've allowed that very fast-moving unit to get across the board because you left me an opening on your side. So I use subterranean deployment against that type of army to keep them a little bit more honest and to kind of help them pump their brakes a little bit. Into shooting units or shooting armies, it really depends on what they've got. If they've got something that could potentially pick up the Tunneler in a single turn, then he's probably going in subterranean deployment. If they don't really have much that I have to be worried about just like making it go away, it's probably going on the table. And like I said, I put Maligny with heavy heavy ray guns in it. I'm not opposed to using the chem spitters that they can get because I think their chem spitters are okay. Again, I'm not huge on it burns weapons. They're very situationally good, but they're also very situationally bad. So having a few in your army is a good idea, but loading up on them, that ain't me. Like, I just don't think it's worth it. Because a lot of, especially the infantry size ones, a lot of times they're just 2 dice. And it's like, all right, if you have one model with 2 dice that ignores hits, big deal. And a lot of times you're wanting that nerve check to fail, and into a third to half the armies, they have a good enough nerve check that it's just not going to matter. But that being said, so like, the other thing I like doing here is if it's on the table and we've got this type of setup, now I might go ahead and bring your boy up here, right? And then I can bring him up, and then he can haze grenades. The tunneler. So now the tunneler is -2 to hit. Now it can't hit the dirt, but now it has 5 shields and it's -2 to hit. So it's one of those, like, again, I'm just trying to cut your efficiency way down. If you've got a shooting army and you're like a GCPS where a lot of your stuff hits on 5s, cool, now you're just going to hit on 7s. You know, and blazing away into the tunneler isn't going to do you a ton of good. It's going to give you more dice, but there's no pins you're going to throw on it. And then what I'll do is I'll bring this rat up here. And the reason I keep the rat behind the tunneler is the tunneler is height 4. The rat is height 4. So the tunneler is going to block line of sight to the rat. And then if you have like a jet, it's tall enough that your jet's not going to be able to ignore it for cover. And so my rat fiend is going to be able to claim cover from my tunneler. And the rat tunneler works against it's an aura. So like you can shoot the tunneler at -2, or you could shoot the rat fiend at -1 with cover, but I can still use my shield on either one. And then I like the grenade launcher on the Progenitor, and then if I remember right, the Progenitor can throw a smoke with his grenade launcher. I'll have to double check that. I think he can. And if he does, bam, I have a 50-50 die roll to smoke the the rat fiend, and I can just automatically do it on the Progenitor. So like I said, it's one of those where, because in my experience, a lot of this game at the comp level is a lot of shooting at tournaments. I've just designed this list to be like, cool, you get to shoot me, but you're never ever going to shoot me on your base shooting stat. Like, I'm going to make sure you're -1, -2, -3. If you wanna spend an order to ignore stealth and then steady aim, that's fine, because now you're not moving and you're spending resources to overcome something that's really cheap and easy for me to just keep doing. The downside to this list is that it rolls 6 black command dice, and that's it. But I found that I don't need them very much, and I average 5 to 6 command points every turn. And I don't need them because if you don't have melee or shooting, right, like into that plague list, my command points are getting spent on things like Teeth and Claws, which give me Frenzy and Vicious, or the Master Creeper aura, which is a aura of AP for all troops, and it works for both melee and shooting. So like I can have AP1 crawlers, I can have AP1 stalkers, and AP1 stalkers, they don't sound scary, but they're nasty because they throw 2 dice each, and it's just so many dice. And they hit on 5's base, so if I get a clean charge, they hit on 4's. So it's like, if I've got if I've got 15 of them, I'm throwing 30 dice hitting on 4's at AP1. I'm getting something through. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm just going to crush you through weight of dice. Crawlers, it's not as good for, but where it is really good is Maligny, because those are also troops. And Maligny with a heavy ray gun, that's already got AP. I now have a unit that has AP2 for shooting, and it hits on 5's with Blaze Away. So if I needed to, I could always Blaze Away with them. So again, like, that's why I have the things that I have, is because they work the way I want them to. That being said, like now I want to touch a little bit more on like those tough matchups that were asked. Now that we've kind of talked about all this, one of the hardest matchups I've played against with my rats has been a well-built plague list, and that's one of those where a lot of that is because I'm not necessarily out activating them, and they're a little bit tougher to kill. Like that regen bringing models back can be a little bit tough, and they don't have a ton of shooting for me to modify. You know, even if they have like heavy weapons platforms, whoop-de-doo, they're just going to indirect me or they're going to smoke their own units, right? Like that's not the end of the world. That's one of those where because of how Plague plays, it's almost in some ways like a mirror match. And that's where it gets a little tougher, is when you're kind of set up the same way I am. The nice thing is that, when Plague players are also throwing their smoke and the Plague players are hitting the dirt, most of my shooting doesn't care because I'm just going to blaze away anyway. And that's going to be the big thing. I found that pins don't really affect this list a ton because I don't necessarily need to do a ton of charging. And the things that do need to charge have unflinching. Like the Rat Fiend has unflinching. Nightmares don't have unflinching, but I have 2 units of Nightmares. And if you're able to pin both units of Nightmares, that should free up something like Stalkers to charge then. And that's why I wasn't like super worried about fitting a Broodlord or Broodmother in, because I don't necessarily need that, right? Because I think she's the one that gets rid of pin tokens. I could be remembering wrong, but I think she's the one that gets rid of pin tokens. Now, don't get me wrong, I still like to play them every once in a while, and in a week, I'm going to be running rats at a tournament, and it's a local one that, like, we have a local group, and we just kind of take turns being the organizers so that everybody gets a chance to play, everybody gets a chance to run. And so I'm going to run my rats at the tournament, and I'll probably run a Broodmother there or a Claw Fiend or both. I'll get away from this list just to kind of do some other things. But it's really hard. Like, I'm looking at this going, man, but I already know what's going to be there, and it's going to be a lot of shooting. So I'm probably going to regret not having the double progenitors. But, it's one of those where, as a Veerman player, you have a tool for just about anything. The issue becomes that, like, a 1,250 point game, you're very limited in what it is you can do, though. And I think that holds true for a lot of armies. But I might go, okay, I don't want to get shot off the table, so I'm going to lean super hard into not getting shot off the table. And then when I hit that all melee plague list, what's going to happen is I'm going to have to be on my P's and Q's now, because I'm not really going to have much to be like, oh, slow down. So now I have these abilities that I spent points for that they don't really do anything now. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So, but now that we've talked about this, let's say they do charge, right? Let's say they win. Let's say I lose the whole unit of Stalkers. That whole unit of Stalkers is 100 points. I think 13 or 14 of them is 100 points. Oh well. I have another one. Right? But what that Enforcers player isn't going to have is they're not going to have an easily replaceable unit, right? Like if I come in, if they come in and they kill all these Stalkers, but then I come in with these Nightmares, even if they like don't kill, and they shouldn't kill all the Enforcers. But let's say I kill 2 or 3 with the Stalkers counter swing, because they won't kill all the Stalkers. Let's say I kill 2 with the Stalker counter swing. They run away. I countercharge with my Nightmares. If the Nightmares kill another 2 or 3, I've now killed 4 to 6. Right? You got 2 or 3 left. They're probably not dead. But their killing efficiency is way down. Because you just went from, if you had a 7-man squad, you just went from throwing 14 dice to maybe throwing like 6. And you just got pinned. And if you don't have those things to unpin you, like, You're going to activate, you're going to shed your pin, and you're either going to, if you have a medic, you're either going to bring a model back or you're going to shoot me. That's it. Because you had to shed that pin. Now, obviously, if you have the command points, you can get rid of the pin. But that's why you want to throw more pins around anyway. You know, you want to use your crawlers to blaze away to throw pins. You want to charge with your stalkers to win assaults to throw pins. And I'll probably do a whole stream on this at some point. But as a player, for Firefight in general, I suggest you stop looking at melee as a way to do damage. Is it a way to do damage? Absolutely. But what I would look at it as, first and foremost, is a way to limit action economy and control it. If I can charge something that hasn't activated and I win, it's now activated and it's pinned. So now you're going to have to decide if you want to spend command points to unpin it. If you've got an order to unpin it, you're now going to have to decide if you want to spend those command points. And outside of Plague, who just come to the game with 1,000,000 command points, that might be a bit more resource management than you wanted to endure. And that's where, like I said, that's how I look at melee. I'm not looking, and again, like when I bring Assault Enforcers, I'm not looking at Assault Enforcers going, these are going to do a ton of damage. I'm looking at them going, if I get these into the right unit, I can charge, I can win the assault. If it hasn't activated, it's now activated. And a good example of that is like a tank, right? Like a Wolverine tank or the stupid dwarf tanks. If you've got those seismic attacks, you're going to get extra AP. You know, so like sending your peacekeepers in, sure, they're not going to kill the tank. You don't need them to kill the tank. You need them to do 2 or 3 damage to the tank so that when the tank swings back and it does maybe 1, you win the assault and the tank is activated. That's how you control your opponent's guns. And that's why, like with Veerman, I tend to play a more balanced list. You need the shooting to throw pins to set up charges. And that's where you're kind of like, you have to learn how to stage your activations. You can't just activate all willy-nilly. So that's how I approach it. That's why I like the double progenitors. And really that's why I like crawlers and stalkers. If you watch my early videos where I did a review on Veerman and I kind of went through everything, my initial take on crawlers were that they were just like, they were trash. But at that point, I had only really played with enforcers. And now that I've seen everything on the table and I've played with them, my opinion on crawlers has changed. They're still trash, but they have a role. They have a point. They're cheap. They can hold objectives. They're throwaway units. When you throw them onto an objective, you can try to bait charges or to like drain shooting to pull it away from your stronger stuff. And that's where like having these throwaway units helps. Because if I move, let's say I move crawlers up here, and then I have my faction order. If you could ask Magic for one model stat line for Veerman, what would it be? If I could ask them for one model and stat line for Veerman, what do you mean? I guess I don't understand what you're asking me. Like to just give me? Or like to add to? Or how do you mean? And while I'm waiting on that response, like I said, like we've got those crawlers, like they're cheap. They're cheaper than stalkers. You could take 10 of them, it's like 65 points. They're not quite zombie levels of cheap, but they're pretty close. And so I can spend a couple command points, 1 or 2, I forget what it is, but they get stealth and they get cover as long as there's 6 or more models in the unit, and I don't have to waste a haze grenade on them, right? So now I can just be like, boom, haze grenades on this, and then boom, they get this, and now it's, okay, they have stealth and cover, you want them off the objective, how much are you willing to dump into my 65-point unit to get it off the objective? And if you don't, I'm going to score points and I'm going to throw pin markers at you. You know, so again, it's just learning how the different rat units kind of interact with each other and figuring things out. And this is where, for me, Veermen shine. They're kind of like zombies in that regard. Like, you have these cheap throwaway units that they're deceptively tough if you kind of build them the right way. If you kind of lean into it in your list a little bit. They have an order that gives them resilient, I think it's 1. But honestly, I almost never use it on troops. If I use it, it's almost always on my specialists because it's a better use of that order. It costs more, you have to boost it, but when you have nightmares that are armor 6 and 3 hit points, that's a better use of those command points, I think. Let's see. Okay, I still haven't gotten a response from your boy here. Let's just reply in chat. And it may just be that the audio hasn't caught up. I don't know what the lag looks like. While I'm waiting, what I assume they mean is like, here we go. If you get a new model squad for Mantic releases for Veerman, do you have any models or things you'd like to see in the game that aren't? Okay. With Veerman specifically, they have so much. That's tough. That's a good question. Because they have a lot of tools, and there's not a ton of overlap. Like, they don't... It's not like Enforcers, where you have a lot of units that kind of do the same thing. What I would probably want... I think some sort of, like, jump pack unit would be kind of neat. Again, even if it's just, like... Stalkers with jump packs, like a skyscraper interaction. They don't even necessarily have to have like aerial deployment or anything. But I think seeing something like that would be really cool. Just to have like that anti-grav interaction with the army. And it's one of those like, I don't think they necessarily need it. But that's what I would like to see is something like that. And it doesn't have to be like a nightmare level unit. It could be something as cheap and shitty as just like, here's crawlers or stalkers, but with jump packs. I think that would be super dope. And if the sculpts are cool, I would play them even if they were trash. And that's just kind of how I am. I spent a lot of time learning comp 40k and getting really good at 40k. That was a good game, man. That was a lot closer than it was like looking at the beginning. I think we ended up, it was only like a 3-point game. But it was one of those like a classic example of just like me ramping the score early. So I play my Veermen the exact opposite of how I play my Enforcers. Like I try to ramp early knowing that a lot of my stuff is just going to die. And try to just bury you in enough points so that once I do die, you can't catch up. And that's exactly how that ended up going. But yeah, I think a jump pack unit would be super dope for them if they were to make one. But yeah, I spent a lot of time getting really good at Comp 40k from 8th through 10th. I stopped in 10th. I don't like 10th. I didn't like the direction a lot of the communities were going. And by and large, I just kind of like, it wasn't for me anymore. I was no longer the target audience. And what I learned, though, was that it doesn't matter how bad a model or unit is. If you're just good at the game, you can figure out how to make it work. And that's always just been my mantra, is like, play what you like, play what you want, and just be good at the game. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are just like, well, this is meta, this is what I want to bring because this is the best. And that's another video I want to do. I want to talk about like Math Hammer and meta and why like it just doesn't fucking matter. And it doesn't. And I hate to say it like that because I know a lot of people are like, yes, it does. It does. I'm going to tell you like this. Like, if you're not playing at competitive tournaments, by and large, the competitive meta shouldn't matter. Obviously, different games interact a little bit differently. Games like 40k, if something's really broken, yes, then it matters. But if we're looking at something like the difference between this unit is mathematically better than this unit by a little bit, so I have to take this unit because this one's worse, that doesn't matter. Like, just learn how to use the other one, be good at the game, right? And that's Math Hammer is kind of how, like, I don't care, man. You know, it's one of those, like, I can do the math and I use the math to make decisions, but at the end of the day, it's a dice game. And I've played enough Blood Bowl in my life to understand that dice are just going to give you the bohica. Like, that's what they're going to do. If you need something to happen, it's not going to happen regardless of what the odds are. So, while yes, I use odds and statistics to kind of process my decision making, it's not the end all be all. Because if that's all you ever did, you would never take risks. And sometimes in games like this, you have to take those riskier moves and kind of swing for the fences, right? Like, there are games where it's like, if I do this and this works, this game is over. And if it doesn't work, this game is probably still over, just in the other way. And so you got to be willing to take those risks every once in a while. And if all you're doing is math hammering, you're never going to do that, you know? So, and like I said, I'll probably kind of talk more on that at a later point. Man, I love D8s, buddy. It took me a little while to get used to, just because I wasn't necessarily used to the curve or the math. They are swingier. That is one thing I will say. Like, that it doesn't seem like it should be, but adding 2 more faces to those dice, it's not a huge jump in percentiles. But holy cow, is it just a swingier roller coaster of a ride, man. Dead Zone's a great example. The amount of games at that Dead Zone tournament where I picked up a Peacekeeper with a shield to some idiot with a pistol was just like, okay. And it just has to do with D8s are swingy. And when you've got explosions especially, like, it just maths it real weird. But I definitely like D8s. I've played games that use D10s, and I like those too. D6s are fine. I definitely have found that I prefer 8s or 10s, but it's not like a strong preference. It's more of a, I like it better, but I could always use 6s, you know. My kids like one-page rules. My daughter loves Firefight, and she plays Plague, and she doesn't care. But, like, my son plays one-page rules, because Firefight's just a little bit too advanced for him still. He's 10 going on 11, and he has no emotional investment in the game. He's almost like the opposite of me, where I could give a shit less about the lore or the fluff of a game. If the game sucks, I'm not playing it. I don't care. But if it's good, then I'll take the time to learn the background, right? But I'm a game first player. Whereas he's the opposite. He's more invested in, like, the lore and the background and all this other stuff. And so, like, he'll play a shitty game if it's intrinsically tied to something he likes. You know, if Mantic were to ever release a Firefight scale Halo game, he would be all in. Hands down. Like, I know this for a fact. He loves Space Marines. We watched the Amazon series, was it Secret Level? Secret Mission? Whatever it is. The Secret Tunnel, right? And that was like his first experience with like 40K animation, and then he crushed through the Warhammer TV series, and now he wants to play one-page rules because he can put Space Marines on the table. You know, so it's one of those, I prefer D8s. It's not a strong preference, but because I still have to use other dice for other games. There was one game I saw where it used D20s. It was a skirmish game, and it was pretty wild. Did not enjoy that. As far as D6s go, I think the coolest D6, and we're getting way off topic here, and I apologize, but the coolest D6 system I've seen so far is this Quars War. It's more of a historical, and it's more of a command and control than it is like a tabletop strategy. But the way the game setup's real neat, because, like, everybody only ever hits on 6s. And then when you have cover, it just, your hit rolls of 1 negate hit rolls of 6s, things like that. Like, it's just a neat system. Yeah, this is the reason I play Enforcer Defenders. You got to deal with those melee units efficiently. Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those where the downside to Defenders in that situation is if they get pinned before they can activate, they're going to lose their reaction. Right? Because they haven't had a chance to get their Overwatch token. And so, like, if you know you've got to play against Defenders, again, I would line up Crawlers if I could and try to pin them. Or if I've got something that could activate them, like if I get lucky and you fail a nerve check on a... it burns. There we go. I knew if I just kind of waved my hands enough, it would come out. You know, if you fail that nerve check on an it burns or a terrifying roll, maybe I get lucky and we shut down your controlled fire, you know. But if I can pin you before you even activate, now I can just charge you with Nightmares or a Rat Fiend, and I'm going to win that assault, right? Like, I might not win it with Stalkers just because you're still Armor 8 and I have no AP, and I'm just relying on a bajillion dice. But if I can line up a good charge with, like, the Tunneler or a Rat Fiend or the Nightmares, I'll win that assault if I can pin them first before they activate. And then, if I win that assault, then they're just activated and pinned anyway, and now they don't get to do anything. So that's one of those, like, because of playing with and against Defenders and other things with Defensible, I've just kind of learned how to work around it. Because it's like, all right, if I had to face off against Peacekeeper Defenders, how would I? I personally prefer regular Peacekeepers over Defenders, but we've talked about that. That has more to do with how I play the game. I tend to play a much more dynamic, fluid, mobile game, whereas you tend to be a bit more static. And it's not better, it's not worse, it's just different. And that mobility, though, is what I like. Like, the Peacekeepers have pretty solid melee, pretty good shooting. They're not quite as durable, and they don't get the Overwatch token. But, man, a go-go-go order with Peacekeeper Defenders into Rainmakers is hilarious. So, I think we're going to wrap up here because we've gotten way off topic. And I've already discussed the things I wanted to. You know, I wanted to talk about Progenitors, unit activation, throw away units a little bit. And you know, we'll probably do another strategy video in which maybe we talk about, like, baiting charges and trading. Like, we'll kind of go into that and how to set that up. But when I do that, I'll probably... What Veerman models do you think could use a buff decrease in points? So... I already know, and no, I'm not gonna talk about it, but I already know what's coming for them. I think the Rat Fiend, like genuinely, regardless of what I know or don't know, I think the Rat Fiend could probably use a points hike. He's pretty efficient. Yeah, Quar's a blast, dude. He's pretty efficient. I think the bodyguards, what are they called? Can't think of them. They come with the Broodmother. First of all, I think the Broodmother probably needs to either go down in points or get some sort of stat buff, because I think she's, outside of her order and her command die, about as useful as a male nipple. And I think her bodyguard is just too expensive. I can't think of what those dudes are called. Broodguard is actually what I think that's what they are. The Broodguard. I think the Broodguard are just a little bit too expensive for what they bring to the table. I'd like to see them go down in points. I think the Tunnelers... I'm mixed on this. Because I only run one Tunneler, right? But everybody's like, well, you should run 2 and you should run 3. They're so good. But, like, that ain't me. I don't like spam. Like, if you want to, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you not to. But I prefer not to. Because spam is how we get things nerfed. Again, I have a very extensive 40k background. If something's so efficient that players are spamming it, it's going to get nerfed. So I've just learned how to play without spamming because I don't want my shit to get nerfed. And if it does get nerfed, I don't want to have to just like reevaluate everything I'm playing so that I have to go like find out what the next broken thing is to spam. So like that's kind of my philosophical approach to it. I don't know that tunnelers are overpointed, but because of how often they get played, I wouldn't be surprised to see them get a points hike. I would like to see them, if they get one, what I'd like to see is maybe just the shield, right? Just give the shield a points hike. Let's see. I think the Claw Fiend is probably fine. He could probably maybe give 2 black dice. But overall, it's fine. And he comes with Nightmares, which are the bee's knees. So it's, for me, like I would play the Claw Fiend just so I could bring more Nightmares. Because those are my favorite model in the whole line. Let's see. I think the Tangle Tunneler is a waste of points. I don't know what the overall consensus is on the community for that. So if you disagree, I'd love to hear why. Just because I look at it and I'm just like, I would never put this on the table. This thing is a waste of points. Yes, it has the psychic attacks, and yes, it's like not bad. But its order to me is just like, it's okay. It's again, I look at its order because that's the one that forces leadership checks. I think it's 2 units within 18 make a leadership check, and if they fail it, they get pinned, is what I believe it does, if I remember right. And that's just so matchup specific, right? It's kind of like with It Burns. And overall, I just don't think it's worth its points when I can bring 2 progenitors for the same cost, and I can get a lot more utility out of them. I think the Tangle is good by itself, but again, the Brood Guard that you can attach to it, I'd like to see them go down, because the Tangle's one of those, like, in my opinion, it's on the cusp of being too expensive. And when you bring those Brood Guard, it's way too expensive. Because again, like, I just look at what I could bring for those points and what I could get out of those points. Like, if I needed to, I don't even remember how much they cost, but that Tangle's like north of 100 points. And I want to say with Brood Guard, it's north of 150, 160. I could bring 3 progenitors for that with no upgrades. I can get 3 black command dice, I can get 3 haze grenades, and I can get 3 activations. So I can just out-activate you. Again, like I'm looking at it from I can control the activations, stuff like that. Would you want to see Volt Stalkers revamped and added to Veerman? I could definitely see them having some sort of jetpack rat. I don't know what Volt Stalkers are. Again, I've only been in this for about 6 months. Is that an old Warpath unit, or is that a Kings of War unit that could be added? Let's see. While you're kind of processing that, let me think. Because I actually just went through all of the Veerman stuff not that long ago and was like, here's what I think could be changed. And I think a lot of it is reasonable. I think a lot of the Veerman stuff is reasonable. Like Stalkers are, I think Stalkers are like perfectly pointed. I love them. I think they're some of the best troops in the game because of what you get out of them for their points. But if you make them any more expensive, they're worthless. And if you make them any cheaper, they're insanely busted. Like, I think they're at that sweet spot. I think Crawlers are fine. Maligni are fine. Let's see. I haven't messed with the Saturation Tunneler, so I don't have much of an opinion on that. I'd like to. I'll probably put one on the table for this tournament coming up, just so I can see how they go. That's a unit that, like, I haven't really used, so I don't know how it kind of interacts. I know how it looks on paper. But again, like with rats, everything hits on 5s. So you got to, like, lower your expectations. You know, something can look really good on paper, but then when you get it on the table and you're just rolling, 4s instead of 5s, it is what it is. Like, that's the crux of, a 50% hit rate. Let's see. The Master Creeper is fine. I think Creepers are weird. They're one of those units that they're like the breach and clear enforcers. Like, I'm so mixed on them. Because for their points, I could just take stalkers. And while stalkers don't have like devastating and anti-tank, they just throw so many damn dice that I don't care. So, it's one of those like my philosophies in the game. Old Star Saga RPG, the rats merged with bleeding edge technology. I mean, that sounds pretty dope. I would not complain if they brought that in. I'll have to look into that and see what they're all about, though. It's one of those like rats are a pretty big line, so it's hard for me to sit there and go, what do we need? Because we have so much. We have a little bit of anti-tank that you can take on like tunnelers and rat fiends. So we have some anti-tank shooting, some anti-tank melee. We have nightmares, which are anti-tank, but also you could just build them to delete hordes. So you have a lot of flexibility there. There's not a tool they don't have. They're almost like shittier enforcers, except none of their units are generalist. Yeah, so they're in Dead Zone, act like elite variants of your regular units. So what they sound like is a Warpstone engineer. And, if you've never played Warhammer Fantasy, I'm sorry. And that, like, Manta can tell me everything they want to about how Veermen have nothing to do with Skaven. But given the company's history, I'm inclined to disagree. Now, they aren't, at this point, just Space Skaven. But like, there's definitely some crossover, and you can see some of the inspiration in them. And that's what you're saying reminds me of, is like the Warplock engineers or the Warpstone engineers. And in fantasy, they were like the people who made the technology for the Skaven, and they would power their technology with Warpstone, which is kind of like if you took magic and meth and kind of crushed them together, and then like the rats would just snort the shit out of that, and then just go like make their stuff. But they also used it to fuel things too. So not only did they like consume it, but it was a fuel. Yeah. I don't know why I remember that about Warhammer Fantasy. Probably because I played that game for like multiple editions, and it was just one of my favorites at the time. But yeah, so overall, like I said, I personally think that Veermen are in a pretty good spot. It wouldn't shock me if Tunnelers got some tweaks. It wouldn't shock me if Rat Fiends got some tweaks. I would like to see, like I said, like the Broodmother kind of going down in points or getting some sort of melee buff. Because in my opinion, as she sits, the only reason to bring her is for a green command die and her pin removal order. And I don't like one-dimensional units, right? Like, she's not going to kill much. She's not going to live super long if you send her into things. You could take the Bodyguard, and the Bodyguard are fine, but they don't really shoot well. They do have it burns weapons. Like, they're not bad. So, we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, I think the Brood Guard are, like, the most egregious units in terms of just, like, what you get out of them and what their points are. But I guess at the same time, if you make them stronger in melee, they're just filling the same role that Nightmares fill at that point. So, again, it's weird. Like, that's probably arguably the one area where you have overlap, is like when you look at what Broodguard bring to the table and you look at what Nightmares bring to the table. You've got this unit. The difference being Broodguard are kind of like a Swiss Army knife. They can shoot and they can fight. They just don't fight as well as Nightmares, because Nightmares are a dedicated unit. So, but I love the army, man. I've had a blast with it. I'm actually going to be packing it up here in a little bit. I got to go run some demos, and hopefully I can get a game in today. We will see. But that's it. I'm not going to let you derail me anymore. I got to get packing. I'm running Halo demos. So if you're watching, come on out to Buy the Board in Lowell, Indiana, and learn Halo, and I'll also have some Firefight with me. I hope everybody has a great day.